Okay, let's set the scene. The date is February 11th, 2026. We are deep in what I guess you could call the hyper-optimization era.
Right. Your AI manages your calendar, your car drives itself.
Exactly. We have basically engineered effort out of almost everything.
It's a frictionless existence. That's the goal.
And then you've got Sweden, a country that's basically synonymous with innovation. We're talking Spotify, Skype. They build the future.
They're always ahead of the curve. And for the last decade, they were sprinting toward the fully digital classroom.
Oh yeah, faster than anyone. One-to-one iPads for kindergartners, digital textbooks, the whole 9 yards.
They were the absolute poster child for EdTech. If you went to an education conference in 2022, the Swedish model was the slide everyone was taking pictures of.
And yet here we are in 2026, and they are just slamming on the brakes.
It's more than that. It's a full-on screeching U-turn.
The Swedish Ministry of Education is basically standing up and saying, you know what, we might have made a mistake. And they're launching this analog revival.
It's a fascinating pivot. While everyone else is trying to figure out how to put VR into gym class, Sweden is spending millions of krona to buy physical paper textbooks.
They're literally putting pencils back into the hands of 6-year-olds.
Yes.
And that's what we're diving into today. We've got a whole stack of reports here. Government papers, studies from the Karolinska Institute, teacher testimonials, all trying to explain why.
And we should be really clear from the start. This isn't some, romantic nostalgia trip.
Right. It's not about the smell of old books.
Not at all. This is a cold, hard policy decision driven by some pretty alarming medical data.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Is this a step backward, or has Sweden figured out something about the human brain that the rest of us are just ignoring?
Because if they're right, we might be getting a lot of things wrong.
To really get this, you have to understand just how far they went. They didn't just dabble in digital education.
No, they went all in. The National Agency for Education actually had mandatory requirements for digital tools, even in preschools.
Which, on the surface, makes a certain kind of sense, right? If the world is digital, you train for it. Start them early.
That was the logic. But what the sources show is that while the kids got really good at swiping and tapping, something fundamental was, breaking down underneath.
And the alarm bells really started ringing from the medical community.
That was the catalyst, yeah. The Karolinska Institute, this is one of the world's top medical universities, they released a report that was just a blistering critique of that digital-first approach.
They didn't pull any punches.
No. They directly linked the heavy use of screens in early childhood to a decline in actual learning capabilities.
And we're not just talking about kids these days can't focus.
Yeah.
This was measurable stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like PISA scores.
Exactly. Measurable drops, specifically in reading comprehension. But the details are what really scared the policymakers.
Go on.
It wasn't just that students were reading slower, it's that they were reading differently. They were skimming. They treated everything like a web page, scanning for keywords, looking for the main point, but they were failing to follow a complex, linear argument.
I think we're all a bit guilty of that F-shaped reading pattern online. You scan the top, scan the left side.
We are, but these students were struggling to turn that mode off. The report calls it a deficit in deep reading.
Deep reading.
It's a specific cognitive state. It's where you engage, you construct mental images, you connect new information to what you already know. It takes sustained, unbroken attention.
And the digital environment's kind of the opposite of that. It's designed for rapid switching.
It trains your brain to be a jet ski, just skimming the surface. Deep reading requires you to be a diver.
And you can't learn to deep dive on a jet ski.
You really can't. And teachers were reporting this. They'd say that even their bright students lacked what they called cognitive stamina.
Cognitive stamina. That's a heavy phrase.
It is. It implies that attention is a muscle, and if you don't train it, it just atrophies.
And that's what the neuroscience was showing.
That's exactly it. And this brings us to one of the most surprising parts of the research. It wasn't just about reading. It was about a decline in foundational motor skills.
Okay, this was the part that really got me. I get the attention argument, but you're saying using a tablet actually messed with their physical coordination.
Think about the mechanics. A touchscreen requires, zero force? And very little precision. Swiping is a gross motor movement,
Sure.
but writing with a pencil, that is a fine motor symphony. You're controlling pressure, angle, direction, spatial planning, all at once.
And because they weren't doing that, their dexterity was suffering.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it goes deeper than just having bad handwriting.
Hmm.
The sources show how fine motor control is neurologically linked to cognitive development. There's a huge amount of brain real estate dedicated just to the hands.
Uh,
So when you disengage the hands from the learning process, you're kind of putting a big part of the brain to sleep.
so, by making the interface easier and more intuitive,
Mhm.
we actually took away the very challenge that the brain needed to develop.
We removed the friction. And it turns out, for a developing brain, friction is a feature, not a bug.
That is such a critical distinction. We spend our adult lives trying to remove friction from everything.
In many ways, yes. And this gets to the science of encoding. The Karolinska report talks about memory retention when you're typing versus handwriting.
I think I know where this is going.
When you type notes, you can transcribe almost word for word because it's so fast, but you aren't really processing it. You're just a conduit.
I did that all through college. I'd look at my notes later and have absolutely no memory of typing them.
Because the cognitive load was too low. But when you write by hand, you're slower. You can't write every word. You have to listen, synthesize, summarize.
And then write it down.
That extra step, that little bit of struggle, that's where the learning actually happens.
It forces you to understand it first.
Exactly. And there's a biological component too called haptic perception. When you form the letter A by hand, your brain gets feedback from your muscles that is unique to that shape.
The movement becomes part of the memory.
The movement is the memory. When you type A, the physical action is identical to typing B. It's just a button press. There's no unique hook for the brain to hang the information on.
It's completely decoupled from the meaning.
Totally. And this also extends to reading on paper versus a screen. The sources talk about spatial memory. When you read a physical book, you build a mental map. You remember that a key event happened on the bottom of the left-hand page about halfway through.
I do this all the time. I'll be looking for a quote and I'll flip through pages saying, I know it was right here.
That's your brain using the physical topography of the book as an anchor for the memory. A digital scroll has no topography, it's just an infinite stream.
It's like trying to navigate a city where all the buildings keep moving.
That is a perfect analogy. So the Swedish government looked at all this data, the skim reading, the motor skill decline, the weaker memory, and they realized the digital first approach was biologically misaligned with how kids learn.
So let's talk about the new strategy, because I think some people hear this and think Sweden is going full Luddite, you know.
Yeah.
Are they just banning all technology in schools?
No, and that's a really crucial nuance in the plan. The goal isn't to eliminate tech. It's about sequencing.
Sequencing.
The plan they've laid out is that the early years, preschool, lower primary, are predominantly analog. The priority is to build that cognitive foundation first.
So you're wiring the brain for focus and deep literacy with the traditional tools.
You build the house with bricks and mortar before you install the smart home system.
I like that.
Once that foundation is solid, once a kid can read a book for 30 minutes, once they can write fluidly, then you introduce the digital tools.
And you introduce them as a supplement, not a replacement.
Exactly.
And that makes the analog revival sound less like a retreat and more like a training regimen.
It's about making sure the human operating system is fully upgraded before you try to run complex software on it.
And they're putting serious money into this, right? The reports mention a huge budget for textbooks.
Hundreds of millions of krona. And in 2026, a government buying paper books on that scale is a radical economic statement.
It really is. It signals that print isn't dead. It's essential infrastructure.
And that stack of paper does something a tablet can't. It isolates attention. When a student opens a textbook, there are no notifications. There's no YouTube tab open.
There's no game one swipe away.
The book demands a singular focus.
It's a walled garden, but a good one.
In a world of infinite distraction, the single-task nature of a book is its most valuable feature.
So this really positions Sweden as this huge case study for the rest of the world, because pretty much everyone else is still on that more tech is better train.
They are. And if Sweden succeeds, if their PISA scores rebound in a few years, it's going to force every other developed nation to seriously rethink their own roadmap.
It challenges the very definition of progress, doesn't it? We've just assumed for decades that progress means digital.
But progress isn't about the tool, it's about the outcome. And if the old tool produces a better brain, then using the old tool is the progressive move.
I love that. If the old tool produces a better brain, we've confused the sophistication of the tool with its effectiveness.
It's like the difference between a Ferrari and a tractor. The Ferrari is an amazing machine, but if your job is to plow a field, it's the wrong tool.
And we've been trying to plow the field of education with Ferraris because they look cool.
And wondering why we aren't getting any crops.
So I have to play devil's advocate for a second. We're in 2026. These kids are going to graduate into a world run by AI. By limiting their tech exposure early, is Sweden risking that they'll fall behind in, digital fluency?
That's the main criticism, sure. The argument is that by age 10, kids elsewhere will be coding in Python while Swedish kids are just getting started on a keyboard.
Right. Will they be the slow kids on the digital block?
The Swedish experts argue the exact opposite. They say digital fluency is actually the easy part. User interfaces are designed to be intuitive. You can teach a 10-year-old to use a new app in an afternoon, but you cannot teach a teenager deep focus in an afternoon if they've spent 10 years fragmenting their attention span.
That is a powerful point. The hard skill isn't the swiping. The hard skill is the thinking.
Exactly. They're betting that a student who can read deeply, think critically, and focus for long periods will be inherently better at using technology than someone who is just technically proficient but cognitively scattered.
Because the AI can do the coding and the organizing. What it needs is a human who can provide the deep structural thought to guide it.
Looked at that way, Sweden isn't training kids for the past. They're training the commanders of the future, the people who can outthink the algorithms.
As we unpack all this, I can't help but think about our listeners. We're talking about 6-year-olds in Stockholm, but this hits pretty close to home for adults, too.
Oh, it absolutely does. The biology of your brain doesn't just change when you turn 25.
I feel this in my own work. I'll sit down to read a report on my laptop, and 5 minutes later, I'm checking email, then I'm looking something else up, and 20 minutes are just gone.
You are experiencing the exact same scanning behavior the researchers saw in the students. The medium dictates the mode of thought.
So if I really want to learn something new, the Swedish method would apply to me too.
100%. If you want to retain it, write it down by hand. If you want to really understand a complex argument, print it out, get a pen, make notes in the margin.
But it feels so inefficient. It feels slow.
It is slow. That is the entire point. You have to slow down the intake to speed up the comprehension.
I think that's the hardest sell for us. We are addicted to speed. We listen to podcasts at 2x. Sorry to anyone doing that right now.
We're widening the funnel, but we're clogging the filter. The analog revival is a reminder that human bandwidth is finite. We have to metabolize information, not just download it.
Metabolize it. I like that. So let's wrap this up. Sweden looked at the hard data and decided that the future of education looks a lot like the past.
A past with a purpose, though, using analog tools to solve a very modern problem, the fragmentation of the human mind.
Betting that the ability to think linearly will be more valuable than the ability to multitask.
And proving that real innovation sometimes means having the courage to stop and just ask, is this actually working?
It's a bold experiment, and I think the lesson holds up for all of us. New isn't always better. Sometimes the best app for productivity is just a piece of paper.
And a pen that doesn't need to be charged.
Before we go, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. We spent this whole time nodding along, agreeing that, yeah, kids probably need less screen time. It's easy to look at a 7-year-old with a tablet and judge.
It's much harder to look in the mirror.
Exactly. If the Swedish government, with all its experts, decided that a digital-first environment was failing their children's cognitive development, what does that say about the digital environments we mandate for ourselves every single day?
That's the uncomfortable question, isn't it?
We work in a state of constant interruption. Slack pings, email notifications, a dozen tabs open. Are we really that different from those students? Or are we just slowly scrolling ourselves out of the ability to think deeply?
It might be time to schedule your own analog revival.
I think I'm going to go buy a notebook. Thanks for diving in with us.
My pleasure.
See you next time.